Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. The topic that we are going to talk about today is on innovation models. What is the purpose of these innovation models? Essentially, we are trying to understand the process of innovation through these models. Innovation as a process will entail two ends. On one side, what we have is a commercial aspect, whereby we talk about the demand for the new product or maybe to the new services that are created. And on the other hand, we have the technological aspect, whereby we find new technologies coming up on a daily basis sometimes, new discoveries being made, and new breakthrough that being attained. Thus, the challenge for introducing the products which are knowledge sensitive to say will be to bring together these two aspects together. The idea would be to match the demand and the technology supply end. Here, how can that be done? What is the process through which this matching will be attained? We will try and understand that through how these innovation models have evolved over a period of a time, particularly beginning from the mid of the 20th century, and how each of these models have built onto what was existing and incorporated new dimensions to the process of innovation. First, to begin with, we need to have a little bit more understanding of the process itself. That deepening of the knowledge will help us in also understanding the evolution of the different models. This builds on the work of Klein and Rosenberg, who has pointed out that technological success is only a necessary but not a sufficient economic condition. Economic usefulness is of an importance, and what we have seen that over a period of a time there has been overemphasis on the technological aspects. Thus, we need to bring in the economic usefulness, the commercial, the demand aspects in order to understand this entire process of innovation. They have also highlighted that the overall process of innovation has tremendous uncertainty with respect to the outcome. First of all, whether the expected outcome may emerge from the innovation activity, that is also uncertain. Second, when the outcome of that innovation activity reaches the masses, let us say a new product has been designed and it enters the market, there is once again an uncertainty whether it will be accepted by people or not. Hence, the uncertainty needs to be managed, and that is of much importance when we look at the innovation process. In fact, they have also highlighted if higher the degree of the uncertainty, then the change that is brought in is also very high. However, when we look at this uncertainty, they have pointed out many a times one-dimensional understanding of the innovation, focusing highly only on the technological and mechanical feasibility would be rather constraining. It is of much importance to understand whether it is the technological and the mechanical feasibility that leads to commercialization, or whether it is the commercialization prospect of the possible product that feeds into the technological and mechanical advancements. Hence, they have pointed out that when it comes to technological importance, this is important from the point of view of introducing new designs. You have to also bring in the taste and the needs of the consumer. That is to say that technological sophistication is not something which is intrinsically valued in the market space. Many a time you will find that a process comes into picture or a product come into picture which may have very high technological advancements. It may have features, absolutely inclusion of the state-of-the-art technology, and maybe features that has adopted or incorporated the most recent advancements. In that case, that doesn't essentially implies that it will also be valued in the market space. In fact, what we find, the valuation many a times come from what are the major sources of the cost reduction, regardless of the fact whether we are looking at the technological sophistication that is being introduced. Not only that, the social aspect of operating system also become extremely important. Then what is this transformation process that we are going to understand and going to look at that? Here, first of all, you have to understand that there is a need to intertwine the technological and economic considerations. This intertwining is of immense importance in order to ensure the success of the product in the market. We may not have individuals who are like omniscient and technical person who would also be well aware of the marketing, distribution and other requirements for the production. That is why there is a need to bring in the feedback from the consumer's perspective. Many times they may also have inadequate information. There is high uncertainty with respect to the final outcome and absorption of the product. That is where the demand related feedbacks are of very much importance. The another issues are with respect to that you may not find a single solution. Many a times, if you look at the new age products, you will find that it may not incorporate only one technological advancement. In fact, various such aspects would be clubbed together, and as a result, you may have one solution. So, any kind of a problem cannot be sorted at one end itself. The another issue is with respect to finalizing the process of innovation, is with respect to measuring the innovation. Effectively, what will be entailing innovation process, product or organizational or marketing, and where do we start, how do we quantify it, how we will be able to understand the impact of that innovation process on the revenue generation for the firm. Therefore, is there a conceptual order for innovation process? No, that is the search. That is what we are trying to understand through these innovation models, which has been talked about in literature for quite some time. So let us begin with, to start with, is what we have a linear model. This linear model essentially has one-dimensional understanding of the process of innovation. So we begin with what we call as a research. Essentially, maybe certain amount of basic research which goes into a certain field of study, and there is a potential that using that a prototype can be built into. You can link it with the advancements in the biotechnology, whereby maybe new discovery of the molecule, or maybe in pharmaceutical sector, a new molecules come into picture. Following that, there is a potential to develop a drug from that. After going through the entire process of the drug development, what you end up being at a stage whereby now the product can be mass produced. Finding the product being mass produced, now what you have to do is market the product and lead to the distribution. So then, in this linear model, what we have is a unidirectional movement from research to development, from development to production, and then from production to marketing. If you look at this model was essentially made popularized by the work of Vanderbush and followed by Bronze, Ames and Liebig. If you look at this model critically, the question that will arise in your mind is whether the science depends on technological processes or the other way round. Now here, the unidirectional aspect which has been talked about effectively mean that any kind of a technological development can happen only when a certain amount of scientific research or development or discovery has indeed happened. Is there a no going back on that? That is an important question. Klein and Rosenberg has given and has shown an example from the development of light bulb, whereby they pointed out Edison, in fact, in his work on electric lightning, was forced by the need of the system to pay a mathematician essentially to develop or work out the analysis of parallel circuit. So clearly the movement there happened from a technological process that was essentially an establishing a electric lightning, whereby they were trying to find a solution to the darkness, and then going back to the basic mathematician in order to find a solution. Moreover, the work on asymmetric perturbation theory itself, the genesis of it lies in finding a solution to the problem of flow over the wings. So these are various examples which we find that in fact that one may have to go back from the technological processes to and from the process technology essentially to develop certain solutions to the basic problems. If that is the case, these are not being these kind of changes in fact are not being taken into consideration in this very simplistic understanding of an innovation process through the linear model. Clearly, what we find is that the feedback effect is missing. That means there is no contribution of the feedback, whether it is coming from a development process, whether it is coming from a production process, or whether it is coming from the final use of the product in the market towards research. Indeed, there is a potential that the production may actually gives it feedback towards the development or other way round. So we have to look into those feedback effects and try to accommodate to this. This is one of the major drawbacks of the linear model, whereby critics have pointed out that the feedback effect is missing. So then, moving forward, there came a coupling model of innovation. This one builds on the works of Utterbach and Rothwell. Now what has happened, if you look at it, there are two ends. On the top end, you have the needs of the society and the marketplace, and below end, you have the state of the art in technology and production. Then, the state of the art in technology and production indeed leads to maybe a new technology, products or knowledge intensive products to come into picture. From the top end, what we get is the new needs. So once you have this, there is a requirement now to bring these together. And when that happens is what is the idea generation comes into picture. The role of an entrepreneur in this idea generation can be of paramount. There are needs which can be answered through the product which may engage with or with the new technology. Having understood that or having got that idea, clearly the process moves forward, and there you find once again a kind of a process which entails research, design and development, prototype production, manufacturing, and then marketing and sales. So again, you come up with a particular research, you design the product, develop it, have a prototype developed from it, do the mass manufacturing, and the product reaches the masses. You can always place any kind of a new to the world, any kind of a product, maybe think from a point of view of your mobile phone or the laptops that they might have been thought about and brought into the real world. Then what you see is this kind of a movement, and then ending with a marketplace. Very clearly, one very important contribution that comes from this coupling model is these arrows. Now you find that all the arrows which we have looked at in these models are essentially having feedback from both the ends. So what you find is the marketplace contribute towards the state of art and technology, and any kind of a challenge that may emerge towards the research, design and development that has a feedback effect towards the state of the art, prototype production, manufacturing, marketing. In case if there is any requirement for them to learn as to what would be the need of the society, they go back, conduct an appropriate survey, learn from it, and then design the process and then design the product. Not only that, there is also a feedback which comes to the society. So the learning happens both ways. And in this way, this is a creative coupling of technological and market forces. So on one end, just to revise quickly, we have the market space, and on the other hand, we have the technology, and these are being now brought together. When you look at this coupling model, essentially, when needs of the society and the market and new technology are now brought together to an idea generation. In fact, this is a step ahead of your linear model. Why? Because you do not have a unidirectional movement. The feedback mechanism exists. However, that doesn't mean that the model does not have its own drawback. What are those drawbacks which have been pointed out? First, it doesn't identify the channels through which the feedback would occur. It is not very easy. It is not very easy that the team which is now involved in manufacturing would simply go to the marketplace and get their survey done and will be able to incorporate them in the process. What are the channels through which this feedback will occur? And at what level the feedback should happen? And in case if there is a challenge, where the redressal will come? If certain problem arises, who will find the solution? Hence, the model, though has been a step ahead of its existing earlier model in terms of introducing a bidirectional or feedback mechanism, leaves certain gaps. Those gaps are effectively that you do not know what are the channels of those feedback. Now, building on this, what you have is a chain link model of innovation. This chain link model, the figure comes from the book of Klein and Rosenberg, and it looks quite complicated. So let us first look at this without going into the arrows. So if you don't go into the arrows, what do we have? So we have a research at the top, then we have knowledge, and then we have certain boxes here. How many of them? There are 5 of them. Starting with the potential market. Then is with respect to the invention that happens. Then you have a detailed design and test. Then redesign and produce and distribute. Redesign and produce. So you have these 5 sections below it. That makes it easy to look at. So first, beginning with the basic research, there is a knowledge. What do you mean by knowledge? We will have a look at it. And then these are 5 steps. Identifying the potential in market, and then coming to invent the product or produce the analytical design. Then having a detailed design and testing that needs to be done. Then redesign and produce for the mass production, distribute the product in the market. So the linear channel is rather very clear. Here at the top you had the research. That means to conduct the new research, or let us say to conduct new work or research in order to find any specific solution. In addition, the model also provides for a knowledge. The knowledge here essentially refers to the existing state of art. Existing state of art. So the main argument which comes from the authors is that at one point of a time, it is not that every time when you find a problem, you would have to go and do new research. There is already an existing body of knowledge, either through the existing research papers, books, or maybe patent documents. So there is a state of art, there is a body of knowledge which prevails, and this body of knowledge can also prevail in the skilled labor, right? So then, is it possible that in case if a solution or challenge comes, that instead of straightforwardly jumping for a new research or going for a new response, you dig into the existing body of knowledge, you look into the existing state of the art and try and find out if there is a potential possibility to find an answer to that. So that is why this knowledge builds on to the whatever the research is existing at a point of a time. And the one which we have here nearly is fairly clear. So then, the model first talks about the centralized chain of innovation. Let us look at what are those centralized chains. The centralized chains are marked by C and moves from here to here to here to here. Okay. So let us add these chains. So these centralized chains of innovation essentially is amongst one of the major part of the activities in the chain linked model. Then what you have is the feedback. In the feedback you have two types, the feedback link and the capital one, which is particularly important feedback. So this feedback you see is now each of the step that been engaged, but it doesn't limit to that. This feedback can be more generic in nature on a day-to-day basis, which may require an interaction amongst the different teams that are engaged either in inventing the product or which are now looking at a testing or the final design. Apart from that, the authors has also made a distinction with a particularly important kind of a feedback. Now suppose there is a major flaw with the product design, or then maybe there is a major security challenge that comes into picture once a consumer uses the particular product. So that kind of feedback is being marked through this capital F. And where does this feedback go to? This feedback goes to distribution to design, it goes to invention and design, and it also goes from potential to this potential market. Right? So it goes from distribute to this factor, goes to this one, and then it also goes to this particular, even at the conceptualization. So this potential market is effectively a stage of the ideation or that of a conceptualization, whereby now you are bringing together the research and knowledge in order to come up with the product which would be catering to the requirement of the market. So there is a major feedback also, which is particularly important feedback that need to be addressed, listened to and attended to immediately. So that comes through this capital F here. So we have understood at least now simply first of all these three boxes, then we have understood the chains that exist, the chain through which it is, why it is being called as a chain link model, and then there is a feedback. The feedback effectively is for the the regular feedback or the regular interaction that happens, and then what we have is the major particularly important kind of a feedback that needs immediate attention. So then you have the links. These are the links from K to R, a link through knowledge to research. If problem gets solved at K, link 3 to R are not activated. The returns from research is problematic, therefore the dashed line. So what does it mean? So if you now look at it, suppose there is a problem, it arises in the process of the invention or in the process of the detailed design, or some challenge comes in the redesigning and while reproducing. So now those challenges can be first met through the existing state of knowledge, whatever is currently existing. So then an interaction happened from here to here first. Now if the answer is found to that problem, then there is a reversal or at least a response to that problem is being provided. On the other hand, if the existing state of knowledge is not able to find an answer, then you might have to engage with the scientist, you might have to go back and ask maybe a new level of research to be done in that context, and that is where you find that this kind of a contribution, then it moves from K to R. So feedbacks which happen from these stages, potential market, invent, detailed design, these specific subsection, the first feedback is expected to go to the knowledge so that we are able to understand that whether we can find a solution within this category or not. If it doesn't happen, then we have to move forward and go beyond and look at the research level. Does it mean there cannot be a direct interlink? That answer is being provided by the others, that is D and S. So you have I as well, which is the support of scientific research by instrument, we'll talk about it, and S, support of research in science underlying product area to gain information directly and by monitoring outside work. The information obtained may apply anywhere along the chain. So what are these I and S? Let us look at. So here you have these I and S. Now what is going on in this I and S? Essentially in this I and S, the argument which has been given by Klein and Rosenberg is that when you look at the major even the advancements in science, that also cannot happen without the use of the various products of the which are available in the market at that point of a time. For instance, they pointed out that without a microscope, clearly we do not have the work of the Pasteur, so no modern medicine. Without telescope, of course, the Galileo's work would not have been there, and we would not have been able to see the modern developments in the astronomy. So, learning from these kind of an example, they said that the existing instruments which are available in the market also feed into the development of the research, and that is where this kind of a link is being provided. So now we have understood an interlink between I and S also, whereby they contribute to this. So S, what is S? S is basically the support of research in sciences, and which is underlying the product area to get the information directly or by monitoring outside the world. The information obtained may apply anywhere along the chain. So here, so this instrument and all are being talked about in terms of I, and S is something, say for instance, there is an important challenge which is being faced in the market. Say for example, in the recent time we have seen the challenges with respect to the electric battery. Some has been catching fire, etc. Now that needs to be understood and gone into. Now you can't go back and look at the entire chain. That can also happen. However, this kind of a challenge has to be straightforwardly addressed through the more research that needs to be done. So now we are left with only D. So what is D? It is a direct link to and from research regarding the problems in invention and design. So if at any invention level or at a design level you find that there are certain problem comes, it need not go into the existing knowledge back. It can also feed it back and go back to the research itself. This D which we talk about also talks about the radical innovation that we have seen in the recent times, whereby the advancements in science translates into new kind of products. Say for example, when we are talking about semiconductor, lasers, genetic engineer, so it indeed creates a whole new industry. The development, the scientific discoveries are such that it need not link it with the existing knowledge. It can translate into creating maybe a newer product and leading to a creation of the new industry itself. So what we did, we started with let us say a base model, whereby we had the research at the top, we had the knowledge. The knowledge was essentially about the existing state of the art or the body of knowledge which exists at that point of time, and then we have these major important 5 steps through which innovation, or you can say research now, translates into a product which can reach the masses. So what are the different steps? There is a potential market, invention and production of the analytical design, detailed design and testing, redesigning and production, and finally the distribution in the market. So first we said that all these 5 different you can say all the different 5 steps which are engaged are now linked with each other. That is what we have under through this C, which is the major reason behind the use of the word chain in the chain linked model. So they are linked. Then, since the model builds on a major critique of the earlier model, that there was no feedback effect into present in the earlier model, so it introduces feedback. The feedback is now introduced at 2 levels. One is the very basic or a general interaction which needs to be done in order to take the work forward, or the major feedback which has to go. So there is a use of the word F, and then there is a use of the word capital F, major feedback and the regular feedback that emerges. Then it talks about 3 other links. One was I, the another was S, and the another was D. The D was essentially talking about that if any kind of a feedback has to go from an invention stage or a design stage into a research. So that can go into there. Then it also talks about if any important information at the market level goes, which will entail the maybe a further research that is there, that is through S. Then I essentially talks about how research itself get engaged with the existing maybe instruments and product and learn from them. Apart from that, at any stage, if there is a challenge that comes into picture, that can be addressed through going to the first existing state of knowledge, whereby you look at the solution, you look for the solution in whatever the knowledge or the body of knowledge exists. If you find the answer, you come back. If you do not find the answer, you go forward. So this is what has also been shown here. So at each end you will find that if you do not find a solution, you will be able to go back. So thus, I hope that clarifies your understanding of the chain linked model of innovation. I'll strongly recommend that you should also read from the references that are given along with the other details of the course. So what are the advantages that we get from this chain link model? First of all, it surpasses the linear model. It focuses on the dynamic coupling between technological forces and market dynamics. So there is, on the one hand, you have this research, essentially whatever the new technologies that are coming, and whatever the new discoveries, technologies, advancements that are going on, and then you link it with what you may call as the market dynamics. However, further authors have also pointed out that there are certain critiques of this chain linked model. What are those? First of all, it does not focus on the organizational dimension, how these things will be sorted out. And another one is that any kind of an innovation process is located within a wider institutional setting. That essentially would mean that it will learn from the existing institutions and it will also feed back into the existing institution. That can be through either the educational institutions or maybe the research organization, etc. So it doesn't link with them. Now let us look at this multi-channel interactive learning model, which is based on the works of Karka, Lundwall and Mendolan. As I said earlier, the wider institutional framework in which the innovation process happens has been missed, and the organizational setup through which the innovation happens is also being missed in the earlier chain linked model. So, learning from those problems, this particular model looks extremely elaborate and rather complex also, but let's make an effort to understand what has been going on. Okay. Now, this model, like that model of chain link given by Professor Klein and Rosenberg, also focuses on an enterprises. So the center is then again an enterprise, which is being treated as a major creator, or you can say a major generator of the economic innovation in the current contemporary society. Now the idea here is, this particular model also preserves the sequential model which we have there, right? One after another, there were 4, 5 steps there. But at the same time, it adds feedback. It also places the entire innovation process which happens in an organization in a wider context. That wider context is divided at 2 levels. One at a micro and then at a macro environment. So we will learn about it. The process of interaction between units and teams within the teams is also being talked about. Apart from that, if you look at the model itself, the chain is coiled over itself, right? So it is made circular in nature, and the basic idea behind it is that you want to understand the dynamics of the learning process. The dynamics of the learning process are being integrated, and they do not want to actually discriminate in terms of where the first step happens. If you look at the earlier models, clearly, even visually, if you remember the diagram, visually also you can somewhere relate that many a times the innovation is coming from the direction still of that of research, of existing base, identifying the potential market and going ahead about it. However, the way this particular model has been designed, the key motivation of the authors here is to ensure that the innovation as a process can indeed begin at any stage, right? So they are not discriminating in terms of where the first step happens. It can principally start anywhere, and the outcome can be either a product or a process innovation, or indeed creating of a new market segment, or of the new approaches to create the business routines. Then the speed of the change in the technological opportunities again and the market gives a competitive advantage to the firm. Now that are both open and agile in innovation and adaptation process. So the question that is how the firm organizes itself and also interfaces with science and user which are very important for its success. So in case of a chain link, what we have seen is that linear model has been surpassed by introducing a dynamic coupling between the technological and market forces that we have already seen. However, the organizational dimension has been introduced in this particular model. So let us see. So the basic idea of the authors in this case is that innovation as such does not happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen in isolation. It has a context, and there are various factors which are influencing, enabling, or maybe constraining the innovation process itself. And there is a near environment, you can say the actors or the organization which will affect the innovation process. So if you look at this one, the top one, that refers to the microenvironment. So microenvironment is an environment with which there are interaction of the firm in immediate, right? So it could be their suppliers, the suppliers of the raw material or other intermediate components. It could be the consultant, brokers, partners, distributors, competitors, and users. So clearly this entails a microenvironment. Why it is being referred to as a microenvironment? Because it is an immediate neighborhood in which a firms interact, right? And then what you have is a macro environment. What does this macro environment entail? The micro environment entails education and the training system, science and technology system, information infrastructure, regulators, finance, and the sectoral systems of innovation. So on the one hand, you have the micro environment which we talked about here, and then there is a macro environment where you see that the firms will have an important source of learning and an important source of building on the existing state of knowledge. Apart from that, the regulator will also play an important role. Let us say now we get certain new norms with respect to the pollution. What will happen? The firms now has to ensure that they would have to reduce their emission. That they can do either by introducing a new technology or by improving the raw material in their product. So they would have to do something in order to meet the regulatory requirements. Clearly, the availability of finance, as we have talked about earlier, is essentially related to the availability of the resources to conduct research and development. Sectoral systems, in a way, we have looked at that there are different set of technological opportunities which are available, and they will vary from industry to industry. So, the sectoral system of innovation in that case will tell a firm what kind of an opportunities are present, what is going on, how they can learn from them. So now let us look at what is there at the core. At the core, to begin with, on the left hand side, we have scientific and technological research, which essentially links with the existing scientific and technological knowledge which we have already talked about, that is the state of the art, or if you have to do something new, that is being represented through the dark blue box as compared to the existing knowledge which is being represented to the lighter blue box. And then coming on to the other extreme end, you also have existing organizational knowledge, the business method research if you have to be doing, or the knowledge of the existing business methods. Then there is a market research and design in case if you have to do new research in order to understand the market for the product. On the other hand, there is an existing knowledge with respect to the needs, values, preferences, and the marketing techniques which are available. So in all these three cases, what we find is that whether we are talking from a point of view of a scientific research, so there also the authors have referred to two sets, the new research which can be conducted or the existing state of the knowledge. Similarly, with respect to the marketing research also the same thing. You might have to conduct new surveys in order to understand the requirement of the consumer, or you may dig into the existing information. With respect to the way of doing things also, you might have to do some kind of an experiment and try and see whether you can introduce this organizational method, or you may look into the existing knowledge. The final outcomes are essentially coming through the product innovation, process innovation, marketing and organization that we have already developed. Now let us look at the brown core. So in the brown core is what we have. First of all, now let us go exactly at the center. In the center what we have are the goods and the services. Within that, like we saw in the chain link model, there is a potential market where you identify the technical and economic feasibility and a new idea selection projects. Then you do an invention, you introduce a basic design or the conception of the services. Then you go ahead and have a detailed design or a prototyping, design and demonstration or testing of the product, and at the last stage you have the commercialization to the implementation. Please note, here also you see this kind of a feedback effects that are going on, right? Now at the immediate core are essentially three major interfaces. The interfaces are coming in these brown boxes through new users, weak signal analysis and intellectual property. Interface through internal creativity, organizational capabilities, knowledge management, through technological scanning, foresight and technological cooperation, which are also again feeding into each other. The arrows have, you see that they feed into each other and they learn from each other. Essentially, the idea is to come up to the core, maybe with the new good or the services that will be the final outcome in the form of maybe this, right? So this is very much similar to the what we had in the chain link model. The major point of digression here is that instead of having it in a linear model, now this is being introduced in the circular model. Like I said earlier, here the emphasis of the author is that they do not want to point as to where it starts. It can start from anywhere. So now we have understood in this multi-channel interactive learning model, the innovation happens within a wider context. The wider context can include a macro environment whereby you are looking at educational training system, etc., and a micro environment of that of a suppliers and users, etc. At an organization level, there can be three major, points whereby the research can happen at a new end or the firm may dig into their existing basis. Then there is an interface with respect to the IP or with respect to the organizational capabilities or technological cooperation, and at the core is the process through which the ideas come into final product, which includes identifying the potential market and inventions, designing, prototyping, and your demonstrating, testing, and final commercialization. So these interfaces are also very important. Why? Because they help the organization in learning and coming up with the newer ideas. Maybe something which is coming from the business method area or from the marketing, and they get some new ideas. Now that can be learned through these particular and important interfaces. Note that these such interfaces were earlier being clubbed together with the feedback effect. However, here the specific function of these interfaces, which has been talked by the authors, is to identify something new, something novel, which can contribute towards either of the outcomes that they have laid out with respect to innovation. And that essentially is, if you look at this brown interface or through this another interface coming from marketing, the model makes it very clear that not all the processes are then science based. Okay, so some might be completely or purely coming from this science driven, and if you see the chain link model also, essentially the role of the research etc. was very important, and it was indeed present everywhere. But here also the innovation can actually come through the different channels also. And then this knowledge pools, we have already talked about it. One important point here is that this the model as has been given by the author, they say that it is for the representational purposes and it is not representative. What does it mean? Essentially, that it does not assume that they have been able to take into care all the factors that will influence the innovation process. Right, so there is a possibility that, and also it doesn't mean that if all these setups are available, then the firm will be able to have a successful innovation. So essentially a representational but not a representative. And what it does and it actually attempts, it tries to provide a stylized representation of the main classes of variable and their relationship which are involved in the innovation process in a wide variety of industries. And in some industries you may find that there are some linkages must be more important, prominent. For instance, in a for instance, in a pharmaceutical, you may find that this kind of link is more prominent. In the another one, you may find that the market-related links are more prominent. In a semiconductor industry, once again, you will find that this link is more important. So then, you have a model which is all-encompassing and in a way, trying to tell you different factors which will be contributing towards a successful innovation process in a